Because this is the one that I really want to have it for the fall. And I have another updates. We added another director of the board, so we changed the prerequisites for everything.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And I'd ask Sue if you please do the roll call.
Sure. Ms. Felice? Here. Mr. Graven? Mr. Johnson? Ms. Kelly? Here. Ms. Garrett? Here. Mr. Mannix?
Here.
Mr. Russell?
Here.
Mr. Burke? Ms. Raganetti? We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. And we have a revised agenda. I'm hoping you had that all in front of you. And I need a motion to approve the revised agenda. We have a motion
I'll second it.
from Heidi and a second Sue Garrett. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Carried? Minutes of the previous meeting, the November meeting, were sent out. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion from Ms. Garrett. Do I have a second? I have a second from Mr. Russell. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. It's public comment period. I've not been notified of anyone who wishes to make public comments, but this is time for people to do that if they wish. All right, thank you. Next item would be the President's report. Dr. Etling.
Thank you, Marty. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start by having the minutes reflect that Don Garrett died last month. Alumnus from the class of 1956 or 7, Ann, then, and a longtime employee. In fact, he was one of Ann's predecessors here. Member of the College Council and was chair of the College Council for a while before he left, Mr. Garrett. Okay. Also, since we last met as a council, we've had one new program approved. Yay! It took forever, but we got it. Approved by State Ed last month. And this sort of, in some ways, rounds out a set of new programs developed in this school, that is a School of Business and Economics, in this building, as a matter of fact. The program that was just approved by State Ed last night was a master's in data analytics. It's, and my compliments to Dean Ortiz-Walters, to Dr. Rohit Rampal and their colleagues in Management Information Systems and Analytics. This is going to be a 10-month master's graduate cohort-based program, 30 hours. And we're hoping that some of our alums, those who graduate with a baccalaureate degree here, 120 hours, will stick around for this 10-month program, at the end of which they will have 150 hours and be eligible to sit immediately for the CPA exam. It was designed in part with that in mind, and we're looking forward to good enrollments in that. And as I say, this is one of 3 programs or program-like things that this school has developed in the last couple of years under Dean Ortiz-Walters' leadership. The others are the online accounting program, which came online last summer. Merelda's first students were Rowena last fall, and it's doing quite well. Is that right? Last fall is when we started that program?
This fall. Yeah.
That's what I meant, just past one. And the third is just across the hall, if you haven't been there to see the Hackerspace Center for Cybersecurity and Technology. There are students in there, I think, who haven't left since we opened it. I think they sleep in there and someone brings them food. It's pretty amazing. And all these things are drawing students here that would not otherwise come to Plattsburgh, or keeping students who are at Plattsburgh for another degree. So I'm all in favor of this and hope that this example will spread across the rest of the college. Okay, other things, new website, long awaited. I'm told that it will be coming online next month. Is that correct? March? Oh, no, not again. Yeah,
Soon.
March 9th.
March 9th is what? The week of March 9th? No?
Maybe.
Maybe.
You know how construction is.
That wasn't fair.
Okay, I should not have said
But it
anything.
was accurate.
I should not have said anything. Sorry. It'll be along at some point. Enrollments. I'm not going to say anything about the fall enrollments. Maybe somebody else will. That is fall 2018. I will say, though, that we were all pleasantly surprised by the winter just passed, winter 2018, and also the current semester, spring 2018 enrollments. We had budgeted in the winter for 632 students, and actually we had 743, so 18% more than we had budgeted for. This semester, we're up about 2% over what we, not last spring, but what we had budgeted for. We're up about 2% over that, so that's good. May that trend continue. I don't know if any of you have been over to the College Center in recent weeks, but I encourage you, if you find yourself over there, to take a look at the new mural in the area where the info desk was. On the main floor there, it's a montage, really, of photographs, and it's terrific. I don't know, whose idea was that? Who knows? Whose ever idea it was, it's a good idea. Okay, I want to also call your attention to our upcoming third annual Diversity Week, which begins on Saturday, February 24th, with a banquet put on by Black Onyx, our student association, and runs for an entire week through Friday, March 2nd. Among the, still being put together, but among the things that are already in place, includes an address on Thursday, March 1st by one of your predecessors, actually, Angel Acosta, who's in a doctoral program at Columbia now, and was the essay president, golly, what, 10 years ago? Something like that? Yeah. A while ago. Extraordinary guy. He'll be speaking here during Diversity Week. There's several other things, different kinds of things that are being mixed in to celebrate the diversity of this campus. This remarkable diversity of this campus. Let's see what else. Oh, yeah, we had a delegation here from an organization called FISU, which is the International University Sports Federation. Came from Switzerland and Poland and other places to take a look at our ice rink. Lake Placid had put in a bid to bring several thousand university students from around the world to games in 2023, either in January or March, and they were thinking about the possibility of using our rink as for women's ice hockey. And it just made me think that I met a few of them who were here to take a look. They were also looking at places at Clarkson and Lake Placid, of course. That when the Winter Olympics were in Lake Placid in 1980, President Burke brought students back after the winter break earlier than he would have otherwise done, and then gave them a fortnight, or what, 2.5 weeks off in February so they could work at the Winter Olympics. And many of them did. And whenever I run into them at alumni events around the country, they still look back at that as the high point of their college careers here. Our residence halls also hosted American athletes in the Summer Games in Montreal in 1976. And they bust them up to Montreal from here. There's a President Ford came to the campus and met with the athletes in our residence halls. So maybe, especially if it's in January, when we won't have our own teams playing as much in the rink as we would in March, this will work out. There's a workshop, 2 workshops actually, one tomorrow and one on Wednesday, called Navigating Change. They're being put on by a consultant from TIAA. That is the group that handles many of our pensions, teachers insurance and annuity, something or other association. Navigating change, because change is not just, as the cliche says, a constant, but also this campus is facing immediate and profound change. And these workshops are designed to help all of us get through that with sanity and collegiality intact. You see, I guess that will do for now, Marty. Unless anyone has any questions. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My report will be somewhat brief, although I am delighted that the first order of business with my report is to be able to make a presentation to Verinda. Verinda had to abscond from our last session, and we were not able to make the presentation to her at that time. But we're delighted to make this presentation at this time. So we'd like to ask you to come on up, Verinda. And I'll read. This resolution recognizes Ms. Verinda A. Kumar for outstanding service as a member of the College Council of SUNY Plattsburgh. Whereas Ms. Verinda Kumar, you step right up here.
Wasn't sure.
As president of the Student Association of State University of New York College at Plattsburgh, vacates her position effective at the end of her term on December 31st, 2017. And whereas as the leader of the student government for the 2017 calendar year, Ms. Kumar has represented all SUNY Plattsburgh students as their dependable, effective advocate as a member of the College Council. And whereas Ms. Kumar has performed her duties admirably, consistently exhibiting wisdom and maturity in articulating the concerns of her fellow students to the Council. Now therefore be it resolved that the College Council of the State University of New York at Plattsburgh lauds Ms. Verinda A. Kumar in recognition of her ability to lead the SUNY Plattsburgh student body and expresses its gratitude for having had the benefit of her candor in dealing with matters of importance to her constituents. And be it further resolved that the College Council wishes Ms. Kumar an abundance of health, happiness, and future success in all her endeavors.
Here.
Thank you so much.
Present you with that resolution, and we present you with.
Oh.
Okay.
I wanted to say I wish you all the best of luck, and if you need anything, don't be a stranger. President Jess Felice is going to do an extraordinary job, I'm sure of that, and I'm sure you'll all enjoy her as I've enjoyed working with her in this past year. Thank you.
And as long as I'm sitting, I'm going to ask Jess if you please stand for a minute, because I want to make sure that Jess is introduced to all of you. Jess Felice?
Yes.
Did I pronounce that correct? Is the new president of the Student Association, and we welcome her to our membership of the College Council. And you had some big shoes to fill. I'm
Thank
sure.
you. Size 8, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. We're very fortunate to have presenters here with us today. One presenter is Dr. Michelle Carpentier, who's the Assistant Vice President of Student Affairs, and will be making a presentation on the Plattsburgh Food Pantry. For some of you may be aware there was a
You skipped Jess.
Yes. No, I introduced Jess, I just did.
Doesn't she have a report?
Oh, excuse me.
It's okay. I do have a few things, a few quick things.
Okay,
I'll come
excuse
right
me.
back to you.
Okay.
I've already been introduced, but my name is Jess. I'm very, very excited to take on this role. The past couple of weeks, we've really just been doing a lot of training, a lot of team building. We have a lot of brand new members, which is awesome because it's nice to see that people want to get involved right when they come to SUNY Plattsburgh. So 2 weekends ago, we did our student association training. It was filled with team bonding, eating a lot of food, and then learning the ways of the student association. This past weekend, we had club training, so we had around 90 clubs join us for club training, where we went through some Title IX training, CDPI, and then we also did our own student association training yet again. And right now, we're just working on getting to know each other. We're working on hiring for certain positions, like our secretary positions, parliamentarian, and then we are coming into budget season, so people are already getting busy with that. And we have a special election coming up this Thursday for our Vice President for Student Affairs and Diversity position. So Thursday, all students will be able to vote online. It'll come right through their email. So we're hoping the voter turnout for that is very good. And that's all.
Thank you. Again, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Back to the presentation from Dr. Carpentier. In Governor Cuomo's presentation, he spoke to the issue of problem that exists on college campuses around the state of New York, but in particular, he spoke to the use of the creation of food pantries on some of the college campuses as a method of addressing that. Plattsburgh already has in place a food pantry. And this is what led us to ask Dr. Carpentier if she would make a presentation to the board, to the council, so that we could all become aware of what is happening here on our campus, and perhaps some comments about what may be plans for the future.
Keith's gonna load me up. So food insecurity has become a national concern for college students. Brian and I were just talking about it this morning. He just read an article that 50% of the community colleges in the country have some form of food shelf already. Plattsburgh State has actually had, has been addressing food insecurity for the better part of 10 to 15 years. How do I do? I just click?
Yep.
Okay. I don't see a cursor, so I don't know where I'm
Just right
clicking.
click. Just click.
Right click.
Okay, maybe it's too far away. We see.
Yeah.
I'll do it from over here.
Okay, you click away. So I thought we would start with a brief history. For about the past 10 to 15 years, we've known that food insecurity, oh, they're on both sides, that's so cool. food insecurity has been an issue, but about 5 years ago, we started to see a significant increase in the amount of food insecurity amongst our students. In the beginning of that time, well, in the really beginning, 10 to 15 years ago, what we would do is if we knew that a student had food insecurity, we would finagle something to make sure they had food. About 5 years ago, we started doing major food shopping runs with students in tow. And it actually came out of individual people's pockets. Kyla and I probably spent thousands of dollars feeding kids up until the time we got the actual food shelf going. And that was about 3 years ago that we actually got the food shelf up and running, where students could come and we could provide a variety of food for them to choose from and take at their own desire, whatever they wanted. What's happening with the increasing numbers is that we are seeing increasing numbers of homeless students and students who are aging out of the foster care system. Those students don't have access to services once they turn 18, so they aren't able to get food stamps, they aren't able to get assistance with any kind of food, and we have seen increasing numbers. Now, as we go, let's go to the next slide. The current usage, you'll see that it's used primarily but not exclusively by off-campus students, and this ties into the homeless issue in the fact that homeless students have a very difficult time managing our dormitory system. It's fine during the year when the dormitories and the residence halls. Bad girl. I try to discipline myself, but I still think of them as dorms. The residence halls are only open during the time that the school is here. So in the times when they are not in the regular session, the students have to pay extra money. Well, if the student is already homeless, doesn't have access to funds, they can't afford the additional money to stay at the residence halls. And when the residence halls are not during the regular session, food service is not provided. So it becomes difficult for the homeless students to maintain a residence on campus. So they tend to move off. The other thing that happens when the students move off, and I guess we can go to the next one, is that the students are moving off, one, because it provides them year-round housing, because they'll find an apartment in Plattsburgh and just stay year-round. But also they're moving off to save money. If you look at the cost of residence, the tuition, the life in the residence hall, and the food service, you'll say, well, it's not going to be that significantly different. But what we find is happening are students are moving off campus and they're foregoing food in order to be able to afford to come to school. So what we do with this is, because it is an embarrassment for most of the students, because they don't want people to know that they're struggling this much for just basic needs. So we make every effort to minimize student embarrassment about using the food shelf. The location of the food shelf is at the end of a hall. Right now, it's at the end of a hall where students can go in and use it without anybody actually watching them or seeing them. We have college store bags there so that they can just throw whatever they want in the college store bag and it looks like they visited the college store, or they can throw it in their backpack. We don't ask students to sign in. We do ask them to put a check mark in a book just so we can keep track of how many people are using the food shelf, but we don't ask them to identify themselves. We don't ask them, we don't research their financial situation. We allow them to come and use the food shelf as they see fit. We would say that generally 2 to 5 students use the food shelf every day. Every day. Now, some of the students will come and take 2 or 3 bags, like it's their grocery shopping, but most of the students will, and actually we've had to stop them from doing this. They will open a box and take out 1 granola bar because they don't want somebody else to not have food. And we've said to them, we've got 60 boxes of granola bars upstairs. If you take the whole box, there'll be another one here in 5 minutes. So don't worry, take the whole box, you're fine. But it's been interesting for me to look at that because I didn't realize that was going to be one of the issues we were going to face, that students are so concerned about the fact that if they take too much, somebody else won't get. that it becomes a real issue, and we have to say, no. Take the whole box, you can take the whole box of dry oatmeal, it's like more. So, you might be curious where the food comes from. And one of the things that really started us out, when first we just threw a bunch of money at it out of our own pockets and got stuff in the bank. But then University Police had a badminton tournament series. And in order to be in the tournament, you had to bring food for the food shelf. And so we got a lot of food from the food shelf. And then UUP has food drives for us at their mixers. Bring a can of food, you know, you can get in. And we also have a Chartwell's food drive, which is seasonal. They usually do it between Christmas and Thanksgiving. And this year their food drive was humongous. It really helped us quite a bit. We also have cash donations, and what we do with the cash donations is we just go and buy food that we can see where something hasn't been donated. So if we suddenly have a need for peanut butter, let's say, we've got the cash donations there and we can just go and buy 5-6 jars of peanut butter. Or but one of the problems with our current situation is that we have no refrigeration, so everything has to be a non-perishable at this point. But we also have, from College Auxiliary Services, College Auxiliary Services donates a bank of swipes every year so that we can look at a student and say, okay, you haven't had any kind of really nutritious food. We're going to give you 25 swipes on a meal card. Use it as you see fit. It goes on the back of their card, no cash. It's very private. It just gets added. They don't have to go through any forms or any, they just have to come to the office and say, you know, I need to eat something. We get them some swipes. It's added to their card. They go, they swipe it. They're good to go. In addition, the Clinton County Board of Health, through Chartwell's and College Auxiliary Services, has gotten involved in our food shelf, and they are actually going to be giving us a refrigerator when we make the move to Macomb, so that we'll be able to keep frozen and fresh foods. We aren't going to be keeping tons of fresh food until we see how that goes, but we'll start with a few things so that we can see what the usage is and decide what we should go, where we should go from there. So I thought I would show you some of the non-food supports. And these are things that we also include in the food shelf, because when they're not buying food, they're not buying toilet paper, paper towels, shampoo, soap, feminine hygiene supplies, anything that we think students might need or might access, we try to keep in the food shelf so that they can get that at the same time. That's a picture of the food shelf. You can see the ramen tower to the right. That's what we call it, the Tower of Ramen. They eat a lot of ramen, but as you can see, we try to also give them some things that might have a little more nutritional substance than ramen. We do have vegetables. We've got tuna fish, peanut butter. We've got the rice, brown rice, and the white rice. You know, we've got all kinds of things. One of the things that happens in the food drives is that we sometimes get a lot of foods that we aren't going to use. In the last food drive, we got a case of baby food. So what we do with that is we collect all the food that we aren't going to use. We have the pickled artichoke hearts and the things that most college kids don't come in and say, man, I really hope you've got a jar of pickled artichoke hearts, but they might. So we take all those things and we take them to the food shelf at the Methodist Church so that it doesn't go to waste. So anything that we can't use when we get a big food drive in, we move out. This is our little breakfast nook, we call it. That's where we keep the cereals and the oatmeals and the things like that so that they're able to grab that. This is our little paper towel corner. Thought you'd think that was cute. And we'll be moving to Macomb soon. And the plans are in place for where we're going to put the food shelf. We're actually putting it, if you looked at our space, it's a long hallway, and the very last door right next to an exit is going to be the door that they can go into so that they can exit right from the building after they've used the space. And it will be a bigger space, so we'll be able to expand the food shelf somewhat. We are reusing cabinets that are coming from Feinberg so that they'll be able to open and close, and students will be able to, actually go in, and we'll be able to keep it neat looking. And we're looking forward to fresh and frozen foods and baked goods, which will help the students have more variety. We're particularly hoping for frozen vegetables and some fresh salad-y type stuff so that it'll be easy for them to get. And the next steps, we want to continue making connections with other food providers in the area. I know that right now, Stewart's donates all their day-old bread to the current food shelf. We'd like to get part of that. We don't want their whole donation because it's like 75 loaves of bread and we don't really need that much right now. But we are going to continue to look at connections with other food providers. We are going to have a consideration of future policies. One of the things that's true about the food shelf now is that it's pretty much word of mouth. The RAs know about it, they spread it. Students who have food insufficiency tend to find each other, and so it's spread that way. But I don't think it's as widely known as it could be if we were actually publicizing it. And so in the future, we may need to have a different set of policies depending upon what demand we see. And there is a college and university food bank alliance because it has become that big of an issue on college campuses. And we're considering looking into joining CUFBA or some other association so that we can learn from them and see what experiences they're having. And that's it. Anybody got any questions?
I do. So the college food bank, is there any mechanism to access food through the regional food bank or to access funds such as community food banks can
Not
through
yet.
the state and federal government?
Not yet.
And what about grants? Have you looked into any kind of grant?
Nope, not yet. But and part of the reason we haven't is it's such a limited food bank right now and we had limited space. So in addition to what you saw there in the little tower, we also have a storage room on the 3rd floor where we keep additional supplies. So we've got enough to get us through the rest of the year with no problem. So we haven't gone beyond that because we didn't have the physical space to do it. We will in the new space and then we'll be looking at expanding.
I just have to tell you, I'm absolutely amazed at all the aspects of this issue that you are addressing, because dealing with this pride of the students is so difficult. And for years, high school counselors, we have particularly students from this area, not necessarily affluent people, come back and ask us what they can do. You know, over the years, it was forever, and you would find some universities that would have it, and most of them didn't. And I'm just thoroughly impressed and did not know it was even here, and I'm embarrassed about that until that whole issue came about. And I know I kind of wrote back to John and a few people, thank you for what you're doing. Now, who is working with you? Just everyone in the faculty? It's just you? Well, God bless you.
No, well, no, not just me. I mean, everybody's chipping in, you know, UUP chips in. And
But helping to organize it.
just my staff. Yeah,
Well, please thank them.
student support services. There's 3 or 4 of us that organize the food shelf. It gets disorganized really quickly. So we,
Yeah.
because people are
You have a
picking
job you're
through
doing
and
on top
stuff.
of this, yes.
Yeah,
It's
but-
amazing. It's
You
amazing.
know, for students to eat, we don't care.
Yeah.
But it's not that big a deal for us. I mean, we have students that we found that have gone weeks without eating and can't have that. As you can see, I'm not one of those people that goes weeks without eating. So there is no way I'm going to let a student do that.
Absolutely. I'm sure you can tell amazing stories. I mean, just with the minor experience I had in a public school system with kids coming back to talk to us, waiting in line in the back end of McDonald's
Yeah.
for
Well,
somebody to bring the garbage out. I mean,
we have students
leftover
that
food.
actually cry when they buy the soup from the food shelf. They are
Yeah.
actually in tears when they know that there's a place they can go. And
college is expensive. Let's start with that. And
Yeah.
wow.
it is.
And they will go without
Yes.
in order to pay for their book or pay for computer access or whatever they might need.
Well,
All
and
that.
it really says something about a student's desire for an education when they'll go without food to be able to be here. That's astonishing to me.
Or go with a little
Yeah.
food in order. Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
So was the grant opportunity where, I don't know if that's the right word, but the CAS swipes that students can get, is that something that they would see when they go into the food bank? Like to become aware of that opportunity? How do they-
No, usually if we see a student use the food bank more than a couple of times, we pull them in and say, hey, do you want some meal swipes? We can get you some meal swipes. If we have a student that we know has gone, for example, we had a student that was living in his car, and before Brian made arrangements for him, he was one of those kids that we knew he was living in the car, so we'd give him some food swipes now and then, but then Brian fixed that situation up, so.
Because these students that are coming in regularly to the food bank are the exact same group that you're probably telling them already about the emergency grant that's available to the foundation. Because it's the same population.
And I really have to say, they tend to know each other. They tend to find each other. But what we're hoping is that once we move to Macomb, we can just make this more public. Because I'm sure there are students we're not finding that we would like to find, but we didn't want to throw it out open to everybody either, because it might be overwhelming. But we do take referrals from people too. People will call up and say, I have a student, I don't think they're getting enough to eat, or they seem to be, and we can reach out that way too.
I think the thing that I'm struck with is, your approach to the problem was, the focus was absolutely on the problem. So often we can get caught up in, the process and not the problem. And you're doing a marvelous job.
Thank you. A practical work.
There are things that I see on this campus periodically that just reaffirm my belief as to what makes Plattsburgh a special place. And this is just one more of those things. Again, I thank you very much for what you and your staff are doing. You realize that this is coming out of the Student Affairs Office. It's the appropriate place to be dealing with it. It really, I think that's where the students have got a sense of comfort and confidence to take a problem to. So thank you again. Next on our agenda, Joseph.
Hi, well, even though this says executive budget proposal impact on SUNY Plattsburgh, which is what the presentation is, it actually will be a joint presentation between I and Pat, and also take care of 10.2, which is the liaison report for business affairs. So you get a 2-for-1 on the agenda. You gonna load it up? I said load it up as opposed to load me up, because I don't have a food pantry or a bank that I can load up.
You just really want us to see that slide.
Okay, so we're just going to do a pretty high-level update on the SUNY budget and the impact of the governor's executive budget, and then have a little impact to Plattsburgh, and then an enrollment projection, so we can see kind of based off of the numbers John talked a little bit about for spring, winter and spring, the trajectory of where we're looking at. So this is a big, complicated slide. it's a complicated slide, but I thought it would be interesting to the College Council to kind of see the SUNY budget and the State of New York executive budget and kind of where they are, since our funding does come from part of the funding comes from the State of New York through SUNY. So if you look at the red circled line, that's the state-operated campuses for which SUNY Plattsburgh is one of those. So SUNY received $7.8 million in funding from the state for the state-operated colleges in 17-18. So that's this current fiscal year. The SUNY Board of Trustees approved a budget request of $780 million for state-operated campuses. And the governor, in his January executive budget, said, maybe not, and provided an equivalent amount.
I think Bill needs you, so
He could have waited.
if he doesn't think he can,
Pardon me.
for some reason.
I was waiting.
Excuse me, this is this where I sign? I hope so. That's all I do, sign.
Radar.
Okay, it's kind of important. That's our gas contract, and if it doesn't, if I don't sign it today, we won't be able to heat the campus tomorrow. And we just locked in some good rates. So
We live from day to day.
yes, we buy it kind of day by day. Yes. And at some point, Bill was. So sorry about that interruption, everyone. Okay, where was I? So bottom line is we had $708 million in SUNY for state-operated campuses for this year. They wanted an additional $72.8 million for collective bargaining increase, and that's what was asked of the governor. The executive budget went back down to the same constant level of $708 million. So you can kind of see where we're looking at. The next slide is a.
Trying to figure out what happened.
He wants to show us that other slide. Next. There you go.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So again, this is a lot of numbers up on the screen, but I've tried to kind of highlight again on the state-operated campuses, and it showcases and highlights the change in New York State funding for higher education from the year 2011-12 through to 2018-19. And so if you take all of these years together, we ended up with almost a $79 million reduction in state-operated campus funding, direct funding from the state. You know, the 2011-2012 situation across the country for public education was an anomaly, thankfully. So if you take that anomaly year out, not adjusting for inflation, there's a actual $4 million increase. That's it, across 7 years, or 0.5% in direct state tax support for state-operated campuses. So this next diagram really has two separate parts to it, two separate tables. One that showcases the actual change, historical impact on campus operations from 2010 to 11 to 2016-17. So this is just those 2 years. What is the change impact for that? And then the boxes on the right-hand side are adjusted for inflation. And so again, I'm using the red circles to kind of hone in on our sector. And so the change for comprehensive colleges from 2010-11 to 2016-17 is actually a 13% loss in direct state tax support. That was offset by an increase in tuition revenue of 13.7%. So less state support for higher education, but the students and higher cost of tuition are offsetting those two revenue sources to result in a revenue gain of about 6.5% across the comprehensive colleges. However, the comprehensive colleges during over that 5-year period had a 8.3% loss in students. And so out of the sectors, the comprehensive colleges are the only sector that had a loss in students between those years. When you adjust all of those numbers for inflation, the net gain in tuition revenue no longer offsets the reduction in state tax support, resulting in a kind of a small but 2% loss in net revenue, along with the loss in students during that time period. So let's just kind of give you a little high-level flavor of the impact of the executive budget going through SUNY and what how that looks from the SUNY perspective. And now Pat's going to talk about what does this mean for Plattsburgh.
Well, what does it mean for Plattsburgh? We'll go to the next slide. Go to 2 slides. First of all, there's been a 42% decline in international students nationwide. As far as applications go, we don't know where we're going to wind up with that. So they fit the full shot. We can see from 2016 to 2017, we had 190 more students. Some of these have dropped out because we're widening the net. And we can see the steady decline in that going over through 2020, 21, 22. That's it.
Thanks. Any questions on any of that high-level info?
Did that last slide suggest that we're aiming for a final head count of 5,500 students? That's kind of the size we're going to settle at? Is that just undergraduates? Is that?
So, I mean, the size that we want to achieve is really, so this is just showcasing enrollment forecasts of what we can attain. I mean, the discussions about what kind of campus we are going to have or what is the right enrollment to fit, I mean, I think is part of the visioning and discussion about that. Mm-hmm. These are just numbers and projections based off of different cohorts and class levels and international applications, those things. So these are just the numbers, not the strategic where we want to be or focus on.
Okay, thanks.
There's a question down there.
Hey, Josie, do you, first of all, are those slides that you can distribute? Or some of the, when we were in Albany a couple weeks ago and talked to Senator Griffo, so the message he's getting is that the system is healthy. And I guess if you combine the university centers and the comprehensive colleges, it might look healthy. And he was dubious of that claim, and he was looking for actual numbers. And I don't know if those are numbers that you would be willing to share or not, but the message I think that the legislators are getting is that the system is healthy, and it doesn't match with what we're seeing.
Well, none of this information, this is all not including the community colleges too. So that's those aren't in here. These SUNY slides that I showed did come from the SUNY administration, the Department of Finance and Budget. As far as I know, they've done the presentation twice. I am thinking of starting my spring financial update to the campus in whatever forum we end up at, probably repeating those smaller forums like in the fall, because I think that was a good way to share the information. And I was thinking of sharing the same level of information.
Well, also, sort of built into those rising applications that lead people to suggest the system might be healthy are things like, 2,500 applications to our EOP program.
Right.
For which we can only take how many, Michelle?
70.
75.
And they can apply to more.
There's several things like that built into this.
Yes, the 7.
So take, the system's healthy with a grain of salt. It is true that university centers applications are up.
And, we did see an uptick in our enrollment for this fall, and it's still trending pretty well for spring. And we're still looking for an uptick for next year, just a smaller uptick than what we were planning from before. So we're still doing, even our campus, SUNY Plattsburgh, is doing better than we were, right, in 2016, 2017. Have we reached where we were at 13, 14? Can we sustain, or to Wendy's question, should we sustain there? Those are the questions.
If we lose and we have a progression before us, if we continue to lose the foreign students that we have, what impact does that have on our reputation as business college in particular, where we've had a very strong showing from foreign students? And what then does that have for impact on performance across the student body?
Well, I can answer that. First of all, international applications are down everywhere. It's the current American political climate that is discouraging people, international students, from applying to come to college in the United States. Canada, Australia, and Great Britain are leaping in with some really robust marketing programs to attract those students who don't want to come to this country for perfectly understandable reasons. What effect will it have on us? After SUNY Buffalo, we have the second most international students in the system. SUNY Buffalo, they're almost all graduate students. And almost all our international students end up majoring in business. So, and they're also good students. They're extraordinarily capable, hardworking, bright students. So it will have a severe impact on this campus if we can't maintain those numbers. And we won't. Severe only in one sense. I mean, the business school will do fine. They'll get students from domestic students or non-resident state students. But international students also form a big part of the education of our very homogeneous North Country students who can't afford, or for whatever reasons don't consider studying overseas. So when we bring in overseas to them, we're providing them with a kind of secondhand international education because we're preparing them for jobs in a world in which people don't look like their friends in Malone. It's just, that's the way it is. And so I think it'll have a profound and very damaging impact on the day-to-day student life on this campus. But I don't know what to do about it. First of all, before the current administration, SUNY with its, we're not calling it rational tuition, what are we calling it? Predictable tuition. Had disproportionately raised tuition for perfectly good reasons for non-resident students, including international students. So we were pricing ourselves out of that market anyway, or getting close to that point. I know Jackie Vogel was worried, but then with the change in the political climate, that just really.
And the dollar's stronger.
And the dollar's stronger.
So it's more expensive for them.
So it makes me heartsick, actually. It's one of the things that we were proud of here.
I have some better numbers for you.
Good.
Do we look at applications, previous applications, where students might not have been accepted, and do we now see where those students, where we will have students who will be applying that will be accepted because of the otherwise fall off in the number of students?
I'll address it in my report, Marty.
Excuse me. Okay. Thank you. More to follow. Any other questions? Thank you, Joseph. Thanks, Pat. Academic affairs. Mike?
Gloria can't be with us today, so I'm going to share the report with you. I shared with all of you a newsletter at the very beginning of this semester that helped to frame the work that we're going to do this semester, particularly around doing the foundational work that's going to lead into next fall semester's work with the strategic plan, and also leading us into, by the end of the semester, hopefully having a strong vision statement that we will build on and help put that shining light before us that we'll all be moving toward, if you will. The other email that I sent out to the council recently was for forums, 11 of them, that are going to occur this semester. You're certainly welcome to attend any of them where we're going to start doing some of that work. So please check your emails if you haven't already to see the dates of those. And if you have questions and have not seen that, I can always answer you by email if you want to just send me an email. When I give you a curriculum update, I want to also reinforce what President Ettling said with the very good work out of the School of Business and Economics with the Masters for Data Analytics, and very hard work by those folks. So congratulations to Rowena and to her faculty for that. I add my congratulations to that. This spring, even this spring, last fall, the enrollments were wonderful in that program, but this spring too, we had a number of applications, which I will tell you, mid-year applications are sometimes harder to get. We had 76 applications this spring, 41 acceptances, and 28 deposits, which is a yield rate of 68%, which, by the way, is very good. So that's just this spring. So that program continues to be very strong. The robotics program that I have told you about in the past has been reviewed by the State Education Department. It has some glitches, though. They wanted to send one of the course descriptions to the Office of the Professions based on, I'm sorry, that's a different program. So the robotics program is still awaiting review. The other program I was thinking about was fitness and wellness leadership, which it did hit a glitch, but it has been reviewed. The Office of the Professions wanted to look at one of the course descriptions, but I think what they're going to find is something that we can fix very easily and then move that forward. That's fitness and wellness leadership. We are looking at a continuation program, so a 2-year continuation program down at the branch campus for biology. The faculties have been meeting between the branch campus and our campus, and we're looking forward to some very close planning for the next time that the State University of New York puts out performance improvement fund monies. We want to be ready with proposals for that. This is one instance in which we would be ready for one of those proposals to do a completion program at the branch for biology. We also are looking at some other completion programs down at the branch campus too, with some not final decisions made, but we're looking at computer security, and we're also looking at marketing at the branch campus. These are going to be important programs as we move into the future and look at demographic shifts and where populations are going to be, and it's planning well for the future to start having those discussions and moving that way. So years ago when Dr. Golden pushed for us to have the branch campus, it was a very smart thing indeed to do and continues to be. The other updates that I would like to give to you, a couple of things out of the School of Business and Economics. There's really a nice event that's going to occur with a guest speaker on the 20th. It's going to target recruitment and retention of racial minority and female students for cybersecurity and IT profession. So that's one answer to your question, Marty. Where else? There are efforts out of the school with looking at the populations of students who are domestic to also build into the school. Also forming a student success task force in the School of Business and Economics that will really focus on retention and graduation rates with students. I want to talk just a moment about recruitment. There's been a lot said about international student numbers. I talked to Jackie Vogel this morning. I dug into the numbers just a little bit more so that we can have a better historical perspective on these numbers. I first got an inkling that something was different when I looked at the school newspaper, actually, over the weekend, and there was an article in there about international students, and it said that last year was an aberration with regard to applications, just the way they opened up the application process, and that there were a lot of applications that were not complete that got put into that, and the numbers got counted. So it then makes more sense, really, to look back 2 years ago and 3 years ago and see what's been happening with those international student numbers. So what I can tell you with the applications, if we combine the freshman and the transfer international student applications, right now we have 143. 2 years ago, 2016, and that's more of a typical year, if you will, there were 165. So it's only a 13% difference from 2 years ago. Now, what starts to develop a trend, though, you go back to 2015, and there were 184. So that was a 21% difference. So it went 21%, 13%, and then last year, I don't think we can really look at that in the way that we had previous years. We know they're going down, definitely, for the reasons that the president spoke to, but we have to be careful in saying at this point that the House is on fire, because indeed our applications, or I'm sorry, our acceptances right now for international students, and it's too soon to talk about deposits, but our acceptances, we have 48 that are freshmen and 4 that are transfer, and that's not too, it's actually better than 2016 at this time. So I think we still have some warning signals ahead of us of what's going on nationally. I've seen articles that talk about that this problem is much more severe in the South compared to the North. So there are some differences across the country with regard to international student deposits, but they will be down, but they may not be down as much as some of the numbers we've had and that you heard earlier today. So questions still out. Certainly we'll keep you updated on that. One of the things I know is that we're using lots of recruitment strategies with the students that we haven't used before. And so Jackie Vogel is very well connected and much better positioned to tackle this problem than a lot of other colleges are, mostly because of the relationships that she has with many people across the world. Domestic students for fall 18, yes, our EOP applications are up, but as the president said, we can only take 75 of those. But let me talk about some of the other applications that we have so far. In the North Country, our applications are actually up 10%. And that's good for us because our yield rates are really good in the North Country. So positive news. There are some demographic shifts possibly. We're still digging into the numbers to figure out why. That in other regions of the state, such as the Capital District and the Mid-Hudson District, we're down about 9.5%, but New York City area is up by about 8%. So while that might kind of balance out, you have to say then what are the yield rates in those areas? Our yield rate is a little bit better in the Capital District than it is in New York City. So that doesn't balance out completely when it comes to that. We are seeing some positive trends in certain programs right now. We've been talking about in the past meetings, and it's certainly true that teacher education continues to be higher than it was 2 years ago. And there are particularly in the master's program a lot more applications than there were 2 years ago, and even more than last year. And we also have a significant increase in applications to our school psychology program. So you see areas of focus where there are some nice increases in application. So any questions about applications and enrollments? I have one more item to share, but it's an item that's the applications and enrollments are something that people are really focused on right now. So I'm happy to take any questions. I won't promise I have answers, but I'll give it my best.
Mike,
Yes.
Mike, I don't know, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, as you were speaking about enrollment, what is the breakdown now, I guess, of the type of student we're getting in terms of SAT scores, class standing, et cetera, as compared to the previous 3 or 4 years? Do you have that data?
I don't have that data. What I can tell you, though, is that our domestic freshman applications are way up. And part of that is just due to the fact that students are now able to apply to more colleges than they were in the past for the same amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes down to the yield in the deposits for those students. Last year, we did have more students who were special admit students, if you will, which then put us this year having about 100 more students that are in academic stronger oversight, if you will, be it on probation or with contracts with academic advising to try and guide them into a successful path. So we did have more students this last fall who came into the college whose metrics that you're mentioning were not as strong. And this is something that I've talked about with some other provosts in the system, and particularly for those of us who are on the fringes of the state, if you will, and I won't name names, that this is not unusual, what I'm sharing with you.
So as we prepare the budget that we talked about a little bit earlier, then the number of students, I guess you're having to allow for the potential for more dropout. Am I getting that correct, or is that?
That's true. The attrition rates with those students is higher. That's definitely true. But what we have to then be very responsible for, ethically, morally, however you want to frame it, if we're inviting those students to our college, we better have the supports in place to help them be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that we're doing right now is putting a little bit more support into some academic advising. There's a grant that's coming out of the institutional advancement that would, if we were successful in getting this grant, would build in some more academic success coaches for us. And we have work to do at this institution too with trying to bring together, and Brian Hartman and I have had an initial discussion about this and need to have much more discussion with people that we work with about how to strengthen that umbrella, if you will, around academic success for the whole college. We have great offices operating right now, such as EOP, such as Michelle's office and Student Support Services. There are a lot of services being provided to students. Don't think it right now, though, that we're really well coordinated and prepared for some of the students that are coming in. So we want to strengthen that a little bit. So we have our focus on that too.
Last question, length of time before a 4-year degree. How is that working over the last 2 to 3 years, and what do you predict for the future based upon what you're saying now?
We have an emphasis on trying to make that as strong as possible. One of the things I know for our college is that we're ahead of some of our competitors, and we're behind others. We're kind of in the middle, if you will, but by the time we're at the junior level, we have about 73% retention rate, and there are some competitors' numbers that I've been looking at and making the faculty very well aware of, that I would like to be achieving those numbers. And we right now are looking at initiatives on this campus to do that. It doesn't always make the chief financial officer happy, because if you get college students through faster, they're not here paying tuition. But I think a lot of students and their families want to see a very clear path to success through college in a timely manner. And that's something that we've been working on, even putting some guided pathways into place. Joanne Gleason-Craig in my office has been pulling that information together, and it will, when the new web comes out, be there in a much more clear way for our students, those pathways, and getting through college in a timely manner.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep. Any other questions related to that item? The last item that I want to share with you is out of the Research Foundation, and it is good news. As of January 31st of this year, we had a total volume of $3,668,000, which is up 10% compared to this time last year. That number includes indirect cost recovery of $418,000, which is good to help run the operation for the Research Foundation and helps with some grants for faculty and some of the work they want to do. That's actually up 34% compared to last year at this time. So that's good news. That's my report. Thank you.
Any questions? Next up would be Community and Government Relations. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Ty.
I only have 3 items to talk about, Marty.
Okay.
On Saturday, the 17th, there will be a congressional candidate forum being held on campus at the Giltz Auditorium. 10 candidates have been invited, 9 Democrats and 1 Republican, and the 10 candidates have confirmed their attendance at that meeting. It's a nonpartisan event. It's being co-hosted by the Institute for Ethics in Public Life, and also with the Center for Community Engagement. Later on, kind of following up on some of the discussions earlier, there are meetings being arranged now with Assemblyman Billy Jones and Senator Betty Little to discuss the governor's executive budget and the impact that it has on the college and the students. And I think there's a lot of information that we saw and heard today that perhaps has been shared many times with the elected officials already, but it's hard to deny when we listen to when I listen to what I've listened to believe that the SUNY system is in good shape. And hopefully we can convince the legislature that it isn't. And lastly, there's an Economic Development Opportunities Forum that's going to be held on March 13th. It's being co-sponsored by the Development Corporation and SUNY Potsdam. And its purpose is to share economic development opportunities with local government officials, realtors, financial institutions, accountants, attorneys, architects, etc., hopes that the information that is learned by these people at this forum will be able to be shared with existing businesses and any potential entrepreneurs within the Clinton County area. That's my report, Marty, and if there's any questions, I'll try, or Keith obviously will be able to answer them for you.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Next report would be facilities capital planning. Heidi?
Okay, there's a lot of projects in various stages of completion. The central campus podium, both phase 1 and phase 2, the podium, is it podiums or podii, are open and being used. But there's some other work that needs to be done that will be done after commencement when there's fewer people on campus. The Clinton Dining Hall is open. The front of the house stuff has all been done. There is some work that needs to be done in the back of the house with the kitchen and some different mechanical and electrical things that will be done again after commencement. There's some work being done in the central heating plant on the high temperature hot water generator upgrades. And Memorial Hall is getting an exterior stair and some mechanical work done. And that will start in May and hopefully be completed by October. Then there are some projects that are in the design phase. Memorial Hall, that's going to be a big renovation, and that is in the design has started as of January, and that's going to be a big project. Hopefully, that will be beginning next year. There's going to be we're in the middle of a design on a roof replacement for Sibley, and also retrofitting and upgrading the bathrooms in the college center. That design is completed and the bids will be going out soon. Then there's some piping and things being worked on around campus. The skylight in the Winkle Court at the Fine Arts design has been completed and the bids will be going out on that also. Then there's some construction going on in Maycomb Hall, and that's being done presently. We're at the midpoint of that, and we're anticipating that by July, work will be done. Bathrooms in Mason Hall are going to be renovated, and that's about halfway done. And Whiteface Hall will undergo a major renovation next year, and that will go offline. And the bidding has gone out, and a company named Murnane Building Contractors is the low bidder. And so now that's going to be awarded, and that will happen. Kent Hall will be redesigned, and that project is being designed right now. And also there's going to be some bathroom work done in Harrington Hall at some point with a start date of May of 2019. And if anybody wants more details, Josie has a nice report. If you look under facilities on the college website, there is a link and nice pictures of all the different projects, and you can get all of the details. Do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Heidi.
Can I ask just one easy question? The last time I heard anything about Memorial Hall, there was a big problem with the pool. Like we couldn't change anything because the pool wasn't up to code or something. Is that an issue now?
Well,
it was something about where it would drain if there was an earthquake or something like that.
So Brian?
So we did a program study prior to the current design program going on, and given the restriction of the type of dollars that are available for this renovation, there's no expansion, and so we got to work with existing footprint, and right now the recommendation is to eliminate the pool. because we lost the gym in Sibley for a recreation gym, and we're going to convert that into a recreation gym long-term, which will also allow us to expand the fitness center in the basement because we will now be able to use the space underneath the pool. So that's the current plan. Timing and all that is still remains to be seen, but.
Okay.
So we
I
won't have
don't
to.
use the pool, that's not personal to me.
Well, it will be a big loss to the community because there are some community agencies that use it more than we do. And we don't feel good about that, but trying to look at what's best for the offerings for our students and recreation opportunities, we think this is the best plan forward, given the rules that we have to operate by.
Okay.
And
So
that's the only pool on campus?
It is the only pool on campus.
So planning and design is going to happen for the next year, basically, on taking the programmatic requirements and then coming up with schematic design of what things might look like and when things might happen. So stay tuned, there'll be more information on that.
So in the future, we won't have to worry about the issue you just asked about.
Drainage.
Drainage.
Earthquakes.
There aren't too many 25-meter pools around anymore. Yeah. Okay, the next item would be Student Affairs and Vice President.
Institutional advancement.
Oh, excuse me, Institutional Advancement, Vice President Hanson.
Thanks, Marty. A couple quick announcements with Dan Burke's absence today. Since the council met last, we have been very fortunate in appointing Carrie Chapin-Levine as our director for alumni relations. So Carrie graduated from the college in '98. She spent her whole professional career here at Plattsburgh, started out in admissions, then to athletics, and we were lucky enough to grab her in about 2008 in our alumni relations office. She's been doing great work for us. And thrilled that she accepted that role. In regards to the mural in the College Center that John mentioned a few moments ago, I just wanted to compliment Aubrey Brissett, and who worked very closely with Kathleen Kelleher in the marketing area to get that new mural, that wrap of all the pictures of students in campus up. We're already talking about the next one, so I think she spent pretty much the whole day over there with the facilities crew. I don't know if you heard about it, Josie, but it was attached and there were some bubbles, and she explained how it could be unattached and reattached, and so they kept doing it till they got it right. So she's a perfectionist. I really appreciate that. I think she made some friends ultimately in facilities, but time will tell. Another just compliment to Aubrey's work. She did do a redesign of our alumni web pages. So this is a very, very small area. It's a sub-web actually that sits within the college website. But she did a phenomenal job with it. So if you haven't been to the alumni pages, the Alumni and Develop Friends pages, check them out. Great photos, some good stories. It's just a lot more fresh. And setting us up well for profiling more of our donor stories. And then year end, for calendar year end, it was a real nail biter, and there were some people in my area that were really disappointed. We ended up with 2,694 alumni donors, and that's actually great. It's 203 more than we had in the prior year. But 2,694 is just 6 people away from our $2,700 target for alumni donors. So there were some people that were just crushed. You know, it hurts when it's just a couple people. But I'm just thrilled with the leadership that Paula Bachman has taken on with the annual giving program, and she works directly under Dave Gregoire, who also assumed more responsibility with annual giving. It's so tech-based at this point, and he's been doing great work with her. So just want to compliment that good work and the fact that they care so much about hitting targets.
Good.
News.
Yes. One question.
Yeah.
How's the new tax law going to affect giving?
You know, we just are in the process of ordering an information brochure about that, which gives just the highlights. It's 26 pages. I've never before sent out an information brochure on anything that was 26 pages of just basic info. I think it's going to affect our everything I've heard. I've attended like a webinar and, you know, tried to get up to speed on it. I think it will most likely impact our kind of lower mid-level annual donors that itemized and, you know, really felt like they were getting a benefit from that, being able to take that charitable gift deduction. So it could affect our all the efforts we're making towards pushing for that growth in the number of alumni donors, which is so, I mean, we're equally focused on that as we are at bringing in the major gifts. I think for some of the higher level donors, they're still going to need deductions. So our hope is that, you know, for some of the folks that are considering larger commitments, you know, there's still great benefits to giving direct from your retirement account. That's still a great opportunity. So people are going to still take advantage of that, I think, more so. I think, you know, the gains issue related to stock, we were able to hold on to that. We appreciated for donors to be able to take the appreciated value of their stock, the kind of present value as opposed to the $5 that they bought that stock at 30 years ago. So they're getting that deduction that's much larger. So it's kind of a mixed bag, and we're still trying to figure it out. The estate stuff is the confusing part.
Do you know? Yeah, I'm just gonna ask.
If you have advice,
Can you give us a 5-sentence?
Well, I think
What's going on?
it's going to hurt a lot of people because
And
a lot of people won't be itemizing
middle
till 12,000 and 24,000, and you only get 10,000 for your state and local income taxes and property taxes. So you've got a lot of space to make up there before you're able to itemize it.
Yeah, especially in the blue states.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are really, and we have a lot of donors in New York State.
Yeah.
That's our
Well,
bread and butter.
whether you're in New York State or out, you got the 24,000. So you got to make up the space somewhere. So won't get any benefit.
Any other questions? Student affairs,
Yes.
are you up to this, Ms. Garrett?
No, I'm going to yield to the expert because I didn't have the flu, I had a flu. Medical world. Anyway, the bottom line is I keep losing my voice and that's a form of torture for me. So I asked Brian if he would, and he's going to.
So a few items. Career Development Center has partnered with Academic Advising on a new initiative to work with students who are on academic probation, and that's kicking off this semester. And that was proposed by Julia Overton Healy and partnering with Suzanne Daly. So that's starting this semester. We had 2 new university police officers join us after graduating from the local police academy, Rachel Youngers and Carter Frechette. Just mentioned quickly the renovation Macomb. which has created space for both student support services and the various programs underneath special programs. And the EOP will be moving to Macomb, which is creating space in the College Center. And while things are not completely solidified, there are conversations going on about how to reallocate that space in trying to maximize opportunities for our students. And then the only other two things that I make note, two of our sports teams are doing quite well. Our women's hockey team has already been named host of their conference tournament, and then men's basketball will be the host for the SUNYAC tournament. So we're excited for them. That's it. Any questions?
How has the flu hit the campus, has it?
So good question.
I'm working on it.
So Dr. Camella shared with us on Friday that 2 weeks ago and last week about it's steady. We're not seeing a spike, about 20 cases per week, which is not that heavy. We are sort of surmising that the number of our students had it prior to coming back because we had such a long winter break. And so she's not expecting at this point, she's not seeing any indications to see it spiking higher than that at the current time, which we're grateful for.
Did you provide flu shots? I mean, flu
Oh,
shots?
yeah, flu shots we gave out close to 700, which is higher than past years. So she's the flu shot queen. She pushes those. She'll visit your office if you want. So yes, our Student Health Center shares or gives out lots of flu shots.
Has anybody given any thought to banning the wearing of shorts on campus in the months of January and February? You know?
I don't know if we'd have much success with that.
I know. But, yeah, I go through here every day and it's like, really? Okay.
I just feel more relaxed that way.
The next item would be nominating an awards committee, but Sal is not with us. So we'll skip over that. Okay. Action items, don't have anything that is outstanding. Campus governance, Dr. Gordon?
Okay. I don't do anything, well, I can't say I don't do anything real, but I don't have obligations that I have to report on. In my role as campus cheerleader, I've been working to get faculty interested in the development of values and the work that Mike is doing. And the pushback that I tend to get is, I'm already doing 8 million things. How can I participate in fora? How can I, is this going to be anything real? And so I think that's something that we need to think about the conversation around, is how our faculty, compensated is not quite the right word, but how do you balance the things that faculty already need to do with this very real need to have a conversation about this, the plans for the campus. I mean, the faculty have to be a part of that, but very many of them don't see it that way. So trying to get people engaged in service and feel like that it is an important part of their obligation is kind of where my head is right now. And all I can do is cheerlead. So we need other input on that as well. And that is the gist of my report.
Does the fact that if they're not involved, their voice is not heard, enter into that?
Well, it's in the past, their voices have not always been heard, or they have not been asked. And I don't think all of them trust being asked now. They aren't convinced that their input will be taken seriously. And so reiterating that we would like them to come and participate is met with skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to either overcome that or ignore them and move on, which would make the problem worse again, I think. But the fact that as faculty, we are rewarded for teaching, we are rewarded for publication and service. We're expected to do service, but there are very few rewards for participating in that kind of service. And so it's a question of how to get people feel like their contribution is valuable and valued when we don't have money to hand out. Oh, you came to a committee meeting here, you know. So I think it's a morale issue. It's a question of having people feel like I'm going to this committee meeting and it's really doing some good. I'm giving my voice to this and it's really doing some good, when I could be sitting in my office and teaching, which I know I get rewarded for, or writing, which I know I get rewarded for, trying to give it the right level of balance there.
Anyone want to comment? Okay. Dr. Hart?
The faculty senate, most of, kind of the bigger projects are in the standing committees, and all of our standing committees are pretty busy. The curriculum and programs committee is working on the idea of meta majors, looking at that idea and seeing how that might help impact curriculum. The academic policies committee is looking at the micro-credentialing issue, and that's something that SUNY just approved some guidelines for and report on, and so that's kind of another current topic. Resources and planning is still plans on working on the budget book, trying to get faculty more involved with the campus budgeting, and the writing of Gen Ed is busy with their conversation series and promoting general education and reviewing general education courses for quality. And the Writing Across the Curriculum Committee is working on doing a workshop and helping the departments have that process go more smoothly with a better outcome. So that's where most of the more interesting things are. The Senate itself is just kind of day-to-day oversight. So, any questions, comments?
Did you say meta major?
Yeah, so the idea of meta majors is, there are students come in and they might not know quite what they want to do for the rest of their life.
Yes.
I can't understand.
So, the idea is to try to kind of group some similar things together, and instead of declaring one specific thing, they can kind of come in an area, sample a bunch of things, and figure out. I think another way that it could come into play is we could look at how students, they make, like in my experience, I'm in computer science. A lot of them come in and they want to do video games and stuff like that, and then they find out it's work, and they want to do something else. And so I think it might be interesting to look at how we can retain those students who and help them transition to another major where they enjoy that more. And so I think that's another area that I hope that can be addressed.
Thank you.
Sure.
If I could just add, part of the idea, yes, me too. Part of the idea here is to try and improve student retention. So if a student comes in and they change majors, a lot of times in their first year, they will have taken a number of courses which may not apply to the new one. So they may have to go back and start from scratch in terms of some of their GE and introductory courses. The idea of meta majors is to get sort of a series of allied majors which would share some of those same introductory courses. So if you come in in biology, maybe you'll switch to chemistry, maybe you'll switch to ecology, maybe you'll switch to one of those. And if those could share some of the same sequences in their first year, then when you made that switch, you wouldn't have to go back and start again and lose a lot of time.
Thank you.
That becomes doubly important when we look at what the state regulation is going to be for these students. You know, they literally have got to be on a 4-year track.
Absolutely.
If they fall off that 4-year track, they're going to lose their incentive.
It's also an issue with the TAP process as well, so that, again, the state will pay for one major. If you can share some of these courses among the majors, they're not going to lose financial eligibility when they switch.
Okay. Mr. Hartshorn?
The news on the contract is pretty much still the same. It hasn't really moved very far. The state has only agreed to schedule one negotiating session for the whole month of February, on February 20th. So there are still quite a number. The basic salary is outlined as pretty much the same as the CSEA contract was, but there are still 3 or 4 major issues that there really hasn't been any movement on. One of them is the how to deal with the extra money that the other unions get in step increases. You know, we traditionally in the past have gotten as DSI increases. So there hasn't been really much movement on that. And that's also money that this campus has used to deal with compression issues and things like that. So the state hasn't wanted to, there hasn't been much movement on that. This is advocacy season for UUP, and so we've been pretty busy advocating for UUP, but primarily advocating for UUP involves advocating for SUNY. And so that has been our major push. John Locke and Ray Gaidosh and I were at the Advocacy Tuesday 2 weeks ago, met with several legislators and dropped some information off with some others. We saw Senator Griffel, which was kind of interesting. He came out of committee to ask questions. He came out of committee and come down to meet with us to ask some questions, which was, in my experience with Senator Griffel, is kind of unusual. There's EOP advocacy is tomorrow. I didn't realize until too late that there wasn't funding for EOP to take students down this year. And so I tried to organize a group, but it was too late. Everybody was already booked. But I'll be going down tomorrow and probably working with some EOP students from other campuses. The NICET Higher Education Lobby Day, which includes CUNY and the community colleges, will be, I think it's in 2 weeks on a Wednesday. And I'm planning on going down for that also. There's, you can, a UUP member can sign up on the UUP info site if they want to join in advocacy on that day. Let me see what else I got here. We have a full labor management agenda coming up on Wednesday. That's pretty much my report. Any questions?
Thank you. Okay. And I don't see either Mrs. Facto or Mr. Farrier. So. Do we have any old business to be brought before the council? Any new business to be brought before the council? Then we'll entertain a motion that we adjourn. Okay. We have a motion. Mrs. Garrett, do we have a second on that? Pat Russell? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That's me.
We have our next meeting in April, on the 16th of April at 1 o'clock in this room.
Should have a budget by then.
Let's hope.
You will have paid your taxes. So that we'll have money in our budget to spend.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you very
What?
much
Shit.
for your help.
Do you see it, April?
All right.
You have snow will be gone. Maybe we'll see.